ankle injuries and ways that you can reduce injuries in cheerleading and what's missing or what's overemphasized and underemphasized as far as injury prevention goes. And also, we're going to talk about some, how you can start to incorporate building strength into your routines without adding 1,000 hours of extra gym time. Welcome to the Cheer Athlete Podcast, where we bring coaches, parents, and athletes expert tips and advice to help keep cheerleaders healthy, strong, and at the top of their game. Now let's go. Welcome to the Cheer Athlete. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about ankle injuries and ways that you can reduce injuries in cheerleading and what's missing or what's overemphasized and underemphasized as far as injury prevention goes. And also, we're going to talk about some, how you can start to incorporate building strength into your routines without adding 1,000 hours of extra gym time. If you don't know me, I'm Laura Turner. I'm the Cheer PT, and I posted last week on Instagram at the Cheer PT on Instagram, asking for feedback as to what people would like to see, and as far as whether we're going to do a webinar and a challenge, and just so I can help people start to really dive into injury prevention techniques, and learn more how to do that. And so the biggest responses that came back is that we really want to, like, ankle injuries are the biggest injuries that we're seeing, and how to prevent them and strengthen around them, being consistent with workouts and how to make our cheerleaders be consistent with their workouts, and that learning and having like a structured sequence would be helpful in having a one-stop shop. I'd love to know if that is something that interests you, if there's other things that you'd like to learn, or other ways that you like to learn. Please send me an email. The link is in the show notes. Send me a DM on Instagram and just let me know, how do you like to learn? Because this helps me to give you more information. And are there other injuries that you're seeing that you want more information about? So I do have an upcoming webinar on February 27th, and there's a free recording. So if you can't make it live, just sign up and you'll get the recording afterwards. And in the webinar, we're going to talk about exactly what we're talking about today, but we're going to dive deeper, of course. So we're going to talk about strength and conditioning and the importance of it. And that is actually one of the big things with injury prevention, and one piece that's missing is we focus a lot, and everybody talks about stretching, but we don't focus on the stability and the strength end of it. And flexibility is important if you are, trying to just move your joint through range of motion. But if we actually want to do and hold a stunt, whether you're a base or a flyer, and especially flyers, I think you guys think the flyers tend to think, oh, I don't need to strengthen, but it's really important for you to strengthen, but not only on your stretch leg or in the back leg and pulling your leg up into a scorpion, but it's really important for like the down leg and for your core and for the side of your hips. When we talk about ankle sprains, particularly, the hip is highly correlated with an ankle sprain. So if you had a prior ankle injury, you're more likely to have a little bit more correlated weakness in through the hip. And so we need to make sure we create that balance and that lateral stability in the hip. Now, in my office today, we talked about ways that we could do this. And one way that I like to incorporate some of that side to side mobility is doing some lateral lunges. And I don't do them as a lunge that I do as a strength exercise. That's a great exercise to get into that side to side plane, where you step to the side and sit back into a chair. But I also do that as a weight shifting to shift over onto the injured ankle or hip, and sitting back and kind of creating some load into the front of the leg and the side of the hip at the same time as you're stretching the opposite inner thigh. And we can push our pinky toe into the floor to create a whole stretch that goes from the hip all the way down to the ankle. And then I like to move like a wave, going side to side, and back and forth with that to go from one stretch on one side to a stability exercise on that same side. And this creates mobility at your ankle and stability at your hips. And that's an easy way to incorporate some functional strength training. That's something you can do when you're brushing your teeth. It's something you can do just if you're standing around at practice waiting for the next rotation to come through, do 2 or 3 reps, and you're easily starting to get your ankle to move and your hip to move. Another key exercise for strengthening to help with injury prevention that I really like for ankle injuries is a step up exercise. And not just for ankle injuries, I think it helps to prevent an ankle injury, but also helps to prevent back pain as well as hip pain and knee pain. Is a step up. So forward, sideways, and then a curtsy step. In doing this, we create all the different motions that we need in the ankle. So we create a forward and back by stepping up forward. We create a side to side motion, and we create a rotational motion when we do a curtsy. And then this translates up into your hip. You create stability in all 3 planes of those movements. So in creating that stability in your hip, it controls how the ankle moves. It's going to control how the knee moves. So if you've seen flyers that or bases, well, let's say flyers that load into a stunt and their knees just kind of cave in, the strengthening and working on that external rotation through the step up exercise will help create more stability. It's more of a weight bearing, so it's more likely to carry over into the stunting, and it creates functional stability, and that will help to control the foot so it's not constantly rolling at the same time. Yes, you can do specific foot isolated exercises like toe yoga, which I think is actually very good because have you ever tried to lift your big toe off the floor without lifting all the other regular toes? All your toes are regular. All of your other toes, try just lifting the big toe and see what happens. And then just try lifting the little toes. Now, do you notice that your toes tend to clamp and claw down? This may mean that you have something going on weaker up the chain and you need a little bit more stability there because the toes are trying to grip. So doing the toe yoga where you are lifting the big toe, lifting the little toes, and then kind of going in a piano-like motion can help to create better mobility and stability in through the ankle and the foot. I really don't do a whole lot of uh, TheraBand exercises anymore, where we're pushing the toe down and turning out, unless it's an acute injury, because that will start to get the ankle moving. It'll start to get the blood flow pumping. And if you've had an ankle sprain, it's important to get rid of the swelling first. That's your first step. And doing that is creating some gentle, easy motion, whether that's ankle pumps, circles, light TheraBand, and progressing. But then we want to actually get into some weight bearing exercises to start to create better mobility all the way up the chain. And the chain being, your ankle, your foot, your knee, your hip, and every single joint in there. And then sooner we can start doing that weight bearing, like with a step up or even a weight shift onto a step, create some mobility in the ankle and the foot. And then that helps to create pumping action to get the blood flow moving, get the swelling to come down. And at the same time, we're creating stability through the joint. So we're creating that reflexive control in all of the tendons that surround the foot and the ankle. There is your perineal muscles, your posterior tib muscles, your gastric, your soleus, a whole lot, and your anterior tib, and then your toe flexors and extensors. We don't need to remember all of them, and you really don't need to isolate them because they don't work in isolation. They work together with the rest of the joints and the muscles. So learning to do things like those step ups or rotational movements when you're standing to create some strength in your hip will carry down into the foot and get that foot moving in and out in a more solid manner. Now, if you come and join the webinar, you're going to get all these exercises in part of the webinar, and a little bit more explanation in them. But just know the starting point for an ankle injury is get that swelling down. I think ankle sprains tend to linger a lot with the swelling in their ankles. So it can take a little time to get rid of that. But the more you start to create that motion and that strength, again, that stability, all of those missing pieces that are in our cheer world that we are not doing on a regular basis, better things are. The other piece, we tend to practice our stunts, but we tend to use that as strength and conditioning, or we're doing just the repetitive motion of trying to do a back handspring, always doing handstand snatch downs. I think those are great exercise. I love handstand push-ups. I love just holding a handstand. Those are great core and shoulder stability exercises. But we also need to do some push-ups, regular push-ups, to get the front of our core in a horizontal position. We also really need to do some pulling to help our upper back. That's going to help pull stunt overhead. It's going to create that stability. It's going to give us nice posture when we're in the air too, um, along with core stability and leg strength. Leg strength, I think, is the big, and you will get core stability with push-ups and with handstands and overhead presses. It's going to and a lot of core stability when you're doing squats and deadlifts as well. Building that stability and that strength that's different than you're doing in practice, and just practicing your stunts will actually help make you stronger for your stunts. The stronger you are, along with good mobility, so moving through full available range of motion, which is where most people talk about with flexibility, but being able to move that actively in good control is what helps to reduce the further risk of injuries. Ankle sprains are very common. You can sprain your ankle walking across the street and roll it on the edge of a curb. You could step on a rock and roll it. Once you've had an ankle sprain, those ligaments don't get the same uh, connectivity that they used to have, and they don't give it as much feedback. But things will heal, and it doesn't mean that you're doomed to have ankle pain forever. But it can be more of a risk factor because you've already had an ankle sprain. It's key, when I had done my research back in 2016, and I'm sure there's more information out there now, it really showed that a lot of the ankle sprains would happen because kids weren't necessarily paying attention to what they're doing. Now, I'm not throwing shade at that. I think that's common. We get into a routine and we're just running, and like we're not focused on everybody else. And we're not like we know we have to go 8 steps to get over to our next spot, but like, oh, the mat isn't set exactly the right way, and you just miss the edge of the mat. And I think that's where the practice, comes in, and it's really important in practice on the mat and having that set up correctly, so that we kind of drill it into our head. And those even just walkthroughs, non-building walkthroughs of knowing I'm going this way, and oh, I might run into that person. I get really tired in this section, so I need to stop. I need to take a breath as I'm walking so that I can keep the oxygen in my head and not have that collision or not roll accidentally. That's hard to train, and little kids are harder to train than adults. It's got to just be ingrained. But the more we can do that, the more we can potentially reduce our risk of a initial injury, along with if you have enough strength and you have enough mobility in your ankle. So if your ankle can move and can supinate and pronate without getting a quick aggressive force on it, then if you have that mobility, you're less likely to tear a tendon or a ligament or both. Um, and yes, recurrent ankle sprains can lead to further injury, like a tendon tear or like a fracture. And that ankle sprains you can get back into practice the next day if you're comfortable and you can do everything you need to do. But mostly you need to let it heal. You need to get your ankle range of motion back, be able to weight bear before you get into tumbling. With a fracture, you're going to sit out for 6 weeks till the bone fully heals and then work on that mobility again. The ankle sprain that leads to a fracture likely happened because there was repetitive injury over time, and it kind of pulled the ligament off the bone, and that requires an immobilization for a longer period of time. So yes, we'd like to get things moving, but again, fractures need time to heal, and that's just how it is. Yes, kids will heal faster. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to get back and go do what they need to do. If they get everything moving, great. And if they are able to weight bear and they're able to jump and load it over time, things will get better. But if we get back too quick, just like anything, that's going to be more sore. So having a system in place, knowing, get the swelling down, that's your first thing. If that's all better, get the range of motion back. That's good. Then let's build some strength and mobility. And some range of motion, creating that strength and mobility kind of comes hand in hand, and building that stability. You can do so. I've talked about step ups yesterday on Instagram. Go check it out. I posted, single leg deadlift and variations for that to make that easier. I think it's a great exercise to get it's really a posterior chain. So your back of your hip motion a little bit more strong. But you can't do that without also getting some lateral motion, so some side hip, and both are really important in the recovery for ankle sprain. Um, we've talked about side lunges, which I think are really important, and moving from side to side to create some load and come off of it. So going back and forth. And I use that also, that's one I think it's good in an acute situation, but it's even more so like as we are going through our everyday life to check in with that and see how does it feel, whether they're again doing dishes or they're standing around, like it's just an easy thing to be able to do and it's good for you. Whoever's listening to this, whether or not you had an ankle sprain, just explore the motions, see what it feels like. It can give you better mobility and control to help make it feel better and avoid an injury. Once that basic range of motion and baseline strength is back, then you can get into more advanced strengthening. Things like the deadlifts and the squats, split squats, getting up and down from the ground, lunging with rotation, which is like if you're step back, if you reach, I like a back lunge with an overhead reach, or you step forward and reach twisting to the side, or you can reach and bring your medicine ball down to the floor and then back up to create all planes. You're getting that rotational plane and that rotational movement in your body to help, create different stressors. And it takes your ankle through that full spectrum. At that point, they should be ready to start jumping and progressing on. Now, consistency is key, right? That's a key for everything. Being consistent with your workouts, being consistent with your nutrition, being consistent with your sleep schedule, being consistent with your rehab process. We know that because we're adults. And if you're a kid listening to this, I appreciate you being here. Uh, Thank you so much for listening, and listen to what your parents say, because they know how much it means to be consistent and what it takes to be consistent. And I know it's very easy to be like, I don't feel like doing it today. But we have to get regimented in our rehab process and our strength routine. How often should strength work happen? I like 3 to 4 times a week during an off season time, which means you're not in active choreography, you're not in active competition season. And I like to do full body workouts. So 2 days a week, you're doing one workout, and 2 days a week, you're doing another workout. And in that, you'll include some jumping and um, some conditioning at the end. And you always do a warm up. If you haven't caught on by now, I think a warm up is the most important piece of an injury prevention program. Getting your body ready to go and loosened up, and not stretching, but creating movement in the joints from the ankles up into your neck is really important in creating that. And that's going to help reduce those injuries. So being, a warm up, your workout and agility drills, your conditioning at the end, and then maybe some stretching at the end or before you go to bed. So off season, 3 to 4 days a week is important, and you can alternate those workouts. During season, which can vary depending on where you're at, is not the time to be ramping up and like going hardcore on conditioning and strength. If you're just starting out, like in the August timeframe, you can be ramping up then. We're starting to build some load. But then through the fall, it kind of tapers off. We want to maintain what we've had while still pushing to get some strength, because the strength, if we don't use it, we lose it. So twice a week, and you can do a 20-minute workout. It can be like all year long, it can be a 20-minute workout. You just got to keep moving through it, and you got to get those reps and sets in. If you have 20 minutes, do as many reps and sets as you can in that time frame, and do it as a circuit so you get everything covered, and don't sit around and just, chit chat. That always used to drive me crazy at the gym. Like I would go in, get my workout in, I'd alternate as much as I could, and then I'd be done in a half an hour, and I had a pretty awesome strength workout. So not taking the time to just kind of rest, that's in pushing through. If you're short on time, get the workout in. You can also do work. I like to see us loading and building strength. So, but you can do sit to stands and single leg sit to stands and single leg deadlifts through the day. A kid could do coming up out of a chair, that's a super low seat. If you're a senior in high school and you're sitting in a third grade seat, that's a big work on the knee. So you could work that through the day and do a couple of reps in intermittent classes, or when you're home before you have dinner. There's ways to work it in. I think in building the strength and the conditioning around it, it's good to have it in a session. And my preference is to do it all at once. But sometimes we don't have time. So work that into the day. Work the side lunges into the day, work your single leg squats through the day, do a round of push-ups every time you go past the stairs. Um, get down to a plank row to get your upper back and your core. If you put those mixed in through the day, now granted, I don't expect any kid in school that's going to school to drop and give me 20 in the middle of class, because that's embarrassing and we don't like to do that. And people might balk at that. But how about when you get home before you go to practice? How about, before you go to bed? How about when you first get up? Now, listen, I read the 5 a.m. club, and I just finished that. And I've been working on getting up at 5 a.m. and I do a 20-minute workout in the morning. I am not a morning person. I missed it yesterday. And I had gone to bed early. There was no reason for me to miss it. And this morning my alarm went off and I was like, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to. And I got up and I got my workout in. And imagine this, as soon as I was done, I was energetic and ready to go. I probably didn't need coffee, but I like my coffee. So I have my cup of coffee after. But you get the point. You put a little energy in, it boosts you for the day. So if you can get up 20 minutes early and go through a workout, it's, for lack of better words, it sucks when you first start. But when you're done, you feel great. And then you're done for the day. And you could do strength work 3 times and do some conditioning and do more of a HIIT workout on 2 other days a week. Then you're good. And your body's not tired by the time you get to practice at night, because you've gone through the day and you've conditioned your muscles and you build strength. I think parents, if you're listening, you're going to need to work with your kids on this, because I don't think I was all that hard to get out of bed when I was a kid, but I remember, I nieces and nephews that I'm like, get up, it's time to get up, let's go. It can be hard to change that habit, but the more you start to incorporate that, and if there's no other time through the day because you're running all over the place, you got to fit it in when you can. Again, during season, they get 2 days a weekend. That's awesome. Try not to make it Saturday and Sunday, when you're competing, but, spread that out through the day, through the week. So this is all things I'm going to dive deeper into, and I'll give you more exercises, and we'll talk a little bit more about what a warm-up routine looks like, and, other ways that we can build stability to help reduce our risk of injuries. If you're interested in joining the webinar, it's free, February 27th at 2025. If you're listening to this later, it'll be on replay. You can still get it, and it will be free forever. And I have a webinar series also that you can have for free, that kind of repeating different things. But you pick and choose. There are exercises in there, and things that you can start to incorporate on your own. I will be doing a challenge after that, and I'll talk about that at the webinar. That's free as well, to get more into building a system and building a habit of, creating a consistent habit to do a workout and incorporate these things into your everyday. And that will be online, so you don't have to show up at a specific time. But if you have questions, you can ask me questions and I'll answer them and send them out as we go. So if you're interested in any of that, the links will be down below. I'm not putting the link out for the challenge until after the webinar, but the webinar will be down below. So sign up for that. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me either on Instagram at the CheerPT or by email, and I'm happy to answer anything. As a side note, I had a wonderful time. We had a cheer reunion at Northeastern this past weekend, and the Northeastern Husky cheerleaders invited us, all alumni, to come, and they invited us onto the floor. We got t-shirts, we got to hang out with each other, we got to catch up, and it was really special. and this is the first time we've done anything like this at the school, and we're all looking forward to it again. When my coach has retired, and I would used to go back and see when she was still coaching, and for they call it Friends and Family Day. Now they call it Showcase right before you go to Daytona. But so we're going to plan to do that again. But the reason I'm bringing this up, don't forget, I've had people say, is it really worth it? What does cheer give you after you're finished cheering? One, I coached for a long time. Two, I'm doing this now. Three, you have connections with your school and your teammates. Maybe even if you stay with All Star and you don't do school, like you make connections that will last you forever. I would go to bat for anyone, and I don't really know the kids after 2009, and they're well into their adulthood now. But if anyone had an issue, or needed a reference or needed something and support, as an OG cheerleader, I'm going to go support them because they're my school and my team, and I still consider them my team. Yes, I'm not cheering anymore. And as much as I love cheering, I don't want to go back and cheer. I don't think I could do anything that they're doing right now. And I enjoy watching it, but I enjoy teaching how to move better at this point. But I really enjoy the connection and the networking. And I think that can be a missing piece. And I think it's really important for us to stay connected, to be able to share and to help. And same thing, if you're a listener to this podcast, like I want to help you. And I think the more we're connected and the more we share and we reach out and help each other, the better the world is. Um, and so I had a great time. And if you see my social media, I posted a couple of videos. I'm excited for the team. They are really making a splash again, and they're making their way back, and they're getting known again in cheer. And it's awesome to see them continuing to compete. I was on the first cheer team at Northeastern way back in 1989, and things are so different now. And it's just really cool to see them going and incorporating it, and to see the dance team as well, because we didn't have a dance team at the time. And so the way everything flows and all the big lights, and like to be back in Matthews Arena, it still gives me chills because I spent a good part of my life in college at that arena. And it brings back special memories. And so know that that's the whole point of being part of a team, is developing that culture and that heart that belongs with your team, and that support for each other. No matter, even if you're not on the same year team, like you still have that love of your school and your organization that will carry on a lifetime. And that, I think, is the best part of cheer. So on that note, thanks for listening to me today. I hope you have a wonderful week. Don't forget, when in doubt, breathe it out. Take life one step at a time. You can do anything you put your mind to. And as my friend Drew Kelleher said, you're responsible for your own vibes. So go get the day.